Fluoride. Dentists say that drinking it can protect your teeth against cavities. Cities and towns all across the world actually dump it into the water supply, hoping to indiscriminately medicate the population through their tap water faucets. The official story on fluoride sounds wonderful. Drink the stuff and you won't get cavities, we're told. It's a nice story. But there's another side to this story, the side you're never told. And it starts with the astonishing but verifiable fact that nearly all the fluoride dripped into municipal water supplies isn't naturally occurring fluoride at all. In fact, it's actually a combination of hexafluorosilicic acid and sodium silicofluoride. These two chemicals are considered highly toxic by the EPA. They're actually classified as hazardous waste, and when packaged for transportation, they must be labeled as poison and handled by workers wearing industrial safety gear. So, what are hexafluorosilicic acid and sodium silicofluoride, and where do they come from? That's the part of this story that you probably won't believe. That is, not until you check it out for yourself. Because the more you look into the mythology of fluoride, the more bizarre this story becomes. And this bizarre story begins at phosphate mining companies. Phosphate is an important mineral used in fertilizers. It's mined from natural rock deposits scattered across the world, and the phosphate rock is then refined to produce phosphoric acid. If that name sounds familiar, that's because it's one of the main ingredients in carbonated sodas, such as Coke and Pepsi. Phosphoric acid is often compared to battery acid. It's a highly acidic liquid that is believed to be the primary reason why drinking sodas can result in kidney stones and a loss of bone mineral density. Phosphate rock is also used to create fertilizers. The problem is phosphate is often contaminated with high levels of fluoride, as much as 40,000 parts per million, or up to 4% of the raw ore. To remove the fluoride, sulfuric acid is added to a wet slurry of phosphate and water. This causes the fluoride to vaporize, creating highly toxic gaseous compounds such as hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride. These toxic fluoride chemicals used to be released directly from the smokestacks of phosphate mining operations, but the nearby farms suffered devastating losses of cattle and food crops, which withered away and died due to, guess what? Fluoride poisoning. In order to stop this environmental destruction, the phosphate mining industry put in place a way to capture the toxic fluoride chemical vapors so that they wouldn't be released into the air and kill the surrounding livestock and vegetation. This was accomplished by installing wet scrubbers that captured the toxic fluoride chemicals, preventing them from being released into the environment and killing the plant and animal life living nearby. It is from these wet scrubbers that toxic fluoride chemicals are now harvested. They're collected, repackaged, shipped to your local city, and then dumped into the municipal water supply. So instead of these toxic fluoride chemicals being released by the phosphate mining smokestacks, they are instead captured and then released into the water supply of large cities, where the chemicals then contaminate the water of millions of people at a time. This is called water fluoridation. When dentists and doctors say they support fluoride in the water supply, what they're really saying is that they support the mass poisoning of the population with a highly toxic hazardous waste product that, if it weren't dripped into the water supply, it would have to be disposed of as a highly toxic hazardous waste under strict EPA regulations. Curiously, it is a violation of federal law to dump hexafluorosilicic acid or sodium silicofluoride into the water. Such an act, in fact, is considered an act of terrorism. Yet it is mysteriously allowed today as long as it is accompanied by a loosely justified claim that we're doing this to stop cavities. But setting aside for the moment the inconvenient truth that water fluoridation involves the illegal act of dumping hazardous waste into the water supply, there's another important question in all this. Do these toxic fluoride chemicals actually prevent cavities? Roughly 99% of the municipal water pumped through any given city never ends up in the mouths of the people. Most water is used for showering, washing dishes, washing clothes, watering yards, and filling pools. Almost none of the fluoride dripped into the water supply comes into contact with human teeth. It does, however, end up downstream, where it contaminates rivers, streams, and ultimately the oceans of our world. In this way, water fluoridation policies have become a convenient loophole through which the phosphate mining industry can dump its toxic waste byproducts into the environment without adhering to any EPA regulations whatsoever. Phosphate mining companies even turn a profit by selling their hazardous waste to cities, then labeling it fluoride, even though this name is scientifically inaccurate. All this raises an obvious question. If fluoride kills cows and crops and fish and is considered a hazardous waste chemical by the EPA, then how could it be healthy to ingest? And why don't doctors and dentists, even though they openly recommend fluoride, sometimes with irrational exuberance, know where fluoride really comes from? If dentists knew fluoride was derived from the chemical waste of the phosphate mining industry, would they still recommend that we consume it? The truth about fluoride is a lot like the truth about Enron or Goldman Sachs or every other shocking revelation that nobody believed until it suddenly became obvious that we were all being fooled for so long. Fluoride is a clever scheme where a hazardous waste chemical is dumped into the environment by passing it through the bodies of people first. We, the people, have become the toxic waste dump site of the phosphate mining industry, and chances are your local dentist fully supports this entire process. Over the last several decades, an astonishing 24 studies have established a statistical link between fluoride exposure and low IQs in children. One study conducted by the Center for Endemic Disease Control in China found that each additional milligram of fluoride detected in every liter of a child's urine was associated with a 0.59 point decrease in their IQ score. Another study found that fluoride exposure slashed the number of children achieving high IQs by more than 70%. It shouldn't be surprising, of course, to learn that consuming a hazardous chemical might impair brain function. Water fluoridation, it turns out, may be the root cause of the alarming drop in academic aptitude among children in first world nations. Historically speaking, the mathematics that were taught to 8th graders in the 1950s are now college-level courses in 2011. Maybe the reason why Johnny can't read or spell is because Johnny's been drinking too much fluoride. So I have 3 bits of advice for you. First, for your dental needs, always seek out a holistic dentist who understands the toxicity of fluoride and mercury. They will advise you not to drink toxic fluoride chemicals from your tap water. Secondly, don't drink unfiltered tap water. In addition to the toxic fluoride chemicals, tap water is also usually contaminated with chlorine and even dangerous elements from old water pipes. Buy a good countertop water filter from a company like Aquasana, or get a whole house filter to remove chlorine and fluoride from the water entering your home. Thirdly, help fight water fluoridation in your local city or town. If your city is like most cities, water fluoridation policies have been pushed by dentists and doctors who are technically ignorant of the origins and composition of fluoride, and yet they seek to assert power over the composition of your local water supply. They essentially attempt to mass medicate the entire population with what can only be called a drug, a biologically active chemical that they claim can prevent a health condition. And yet, has this drug called fluoride ever received FDA approval as a drug? Have the individual members of the population been individually assessed for their need for such a drug? Have medication doses and drug interactions been considered? Has anyone even been written a prescription for this drug? The answer is no. Fluoride is an unapproved drug being used in a highly illegal mass medication scheme that provides an excuse for the real agenda of disposing of a highly toxic, hazardous waste chemical. It's time to stop fluoride. Demand an end to fluoridation in your local cities and towns. Call for those who purchase and handle fluoride to stop what they're doing. Question the safety of these toxic chemicals being dripped into the water supply. These are actions that endanger the public. They could be called acts of terrorism. And publicly shame the doctors and dentists who have taken part in this mass chemical poisoning, causing untold harm to populations all over the world. Help us stop the fluoride poisoning of our world. Learn more at naturalnews.com. Join the Facebook group No Fluoride. See more videos about fluoride at naturalnews.tv. Visit fluoridealert.org and other anti-fluoride websites that are working to end the fluoride poisoning. Together, with your help, we can end the era of fluoride in our world and protect our children from this industrial poison. Thank you for listening. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, reporting for naturalnews.com and the nonprofit Consumer Wellness Center.
Mandrake.
Yes, Jack?
Have you ever seen a commie drink a glass of water?
Well, no, I can't say I have, Jack.
Vodka. That's what they drink, isn't it? Never water?
Well, I believe that's what they drink, Jack, yes.
On no account will a commie ever drink water, and not without good reason.
Oh, yes. I don't quite see what you're getting at, Jack.
Water. That's what I'm getting at, water. Mandrake, water is the source of all life. 7/10 of this Earth's surface is water. Why do you realize that 70% of you is water?
Oh, Lord.
And as human beings, you and I need fresh, pure water to replenish our precious bodily fluids.
Yes.
Are you beginning to understand?
Yes.
Mandrake. Mandrake, have you never wondered why I drink only distilled water or rainwater and only pure grain alcohol?
Well, it did occur to me, Jack, yes.
Have you ever heard of a thing called fluoridation? Fluoridation of water?
Yes, I have heard of that, Jack, yes. Yes.
Well, do you know what it is?
No. No, I don't know what it is now.
Do you realize that fluoridation is the most monstrously conceived and dangerous communist plot we have ever had to face?
Well, one of the main reasons water is so bad here in the States is because they put fluoride in the water. Yeah, there are men who literally put on hazmat suits because if they touch the substance, they will die. And they pump this in our water. They convinced us that there are safe levels of poison and that the fluoride is good for our teeth. So without any dissension, we drink it up. Now, see, the only problem with that is that it's not good for teeth or human consumption, period. It's toxic. It calcifies the pineal gland. It's been proven to lower the IQ of children. It's been proven to be cancerous and the cause for various ailments. What's even worse is that's not even the only thing that they put in the water that's not good for us. As most people know, they put chlorine in the water to kill bacteria. But of course, that also has adverse effects. There's also lead and arsenic and other contaminants in the water that are there as a result of very bad corporate decisions. There's also pharmaceuticals, pesticides, and things that run off into our water systems. That's why I've been literally making my own devices, conducting experiments, and consulting people who understand the issue at hand. But for something immediate that really works, this might not be a do-it-yourself job. And so I met with a specialist from Connecticut that allowed me to film him, and we're going to talk about some things and why I'm considering filtration, and why you might want to as well. Hey, Michael.
Hey, my name is Michael. I'm a water testing specialist. We are a Home Depot service provider. And I represent the company called Kinetico, which is the top-rated consumer report company in the United States. And we're here with Andrew Drew to test his water, and I explain what's going on. Okay, we're located in New York City. So New York City sends out the report, quality report, for all the homeowners. So you can go to library or dep.org, right. And all the languages, they say everything is okay with water. Translate it and read it, and don't tell us that we didn't warn you what's going on. Out of big city water ratings, out of 150 biggest cities, New York is not number one, like some people think.
A lot of people have told us.
We are number 41, right. Which is not the worst, but not the best either.
Maybe they mean that the New York water is the best tasting?
No, it's not because of that. It's just because every frog, bribes about her swamp, because you go to Maine, they're gonna swear they have the best water. You go to Pocono, they say no, we have the best water. In Alaska, people are gonna laugh and like, we have wilderness, we have the best water. Right. So, but if to go by the facts, you have to understand that our water comes from all the way from upstate, hundreds of miles away. By the time the water travels all the way to New York City, and Staten Island is kind of like in the end of the tunnel. Mm-hmm. Okay. The water, they say, the water may have contaminants, like including microbiological contaminants and organic contaminants, pesticides, herbicides, organic contaminants, and even radioactive contaminants.
Radioactive contaminants?
Yes. Why do you think they mention this? It's in our water,
right. And
they have to disclose it. Now, whatever the millions of cars put pollution, they don't put flour dust in the air. You have all these, things come up, eventually go down. Pesticides, herbicides, pharmaceuticals, people pee out, and stuff like that. Everything nothing goes to space. Everything stays on the planet. By the time it collects, like from the dumps, former garbage dumps, and gets into aquifers, the water has to travel through Delaware Aqueduct, which is the water tunnel tube, which been around for almost 150 years. 150 years old. Rain, water, rats, mice, pooping, dying inside they're building the new one. Remember the Bruce Willis driving? That was the new one they were building. Okay, that's how big it is, that you can fit the truck inside this thing. Wow. But the water travels through this, and obviously the water, in order for the water, like this is regular tap water. I got 3 samples of tap water and the other water. Like if I ask you, does this water look clear to you?
Yeah.
like to your eyes.
To the visible eye, yeah.
Yeah, you see the bottom. I brought with me a sample of the water that we know it's pure. We call it H2O. If I put them side by side, take a look. Well, because what happens when the water travels through the tunnels and stuff like that, they have to treat it, and the water goes through treatment plant, and they use not candy, they use harsh chemical like 7-8 different, like aluminum sulfide, sodium chloride, fluoride, bromine, and so on, because their number one priority, not us, to protect the main pipes of New York City, because they cannot replace them until they completely rotten out. So they trying to drag it as long as possible.
So you're saying the chemicals that they put in there are not necessarily for keeping the water clean.
No,
it's to protect the pipe.
Protect the pipes. Yes, mostly. Imagine this is water, New York City water mains.
Wow.
Imagine your soup traveling 100 miles through the pipe like this. Would you eat that soup?
Absolutely.
Probably not. Well, a lot of people don't realize that it has to go from house to house, boiler to boiler, pipe to pipe. And one of the biggest mistake people said, because New York City does have elevated level of lead once in a while, depending on the building, how old it is. You can have a brand new home, but you are connected to the water main, and they're not going to replace it until it completely rotten out.
So they know that there's a lot of lead in the water.
You know, yes, because up to 1986 they were using lead to solder pipes together. So, and that's why New York City says, and one of the most common mistake people do, they say, I don't drink tap water, I boil it. Well, boiling actually makes the water worse, not better. Because like I said, in the 19th century, there was no chemicals, and you boil the water and it kills bacteria and it's safe. Now that you have a lead, you see 311, they say, do not boil water to remove lead. Boiling will not remove lead, it will actually concentrate it.
Wow.
So what happens is when the water boils, the steam, it's a distilled water evaporating and leaving the pot, and all the chemicals concentrate, and the more we boil it, the more concentrated it becomes. So when we're going to test your boiled water, even if it's after filtration, you'll see that this is actually going to be your worst water in the house.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, when the water travels through the water tunnels with rats and mice, and the water comes from the lake where fish pooping and dying and stuff, obviously we don't want to have epidemics. So do me a favor, try a little sip of this water first. This is filtered water.
Okay.
And try a little bit of this, because we don't
don't
have
really
to
drink tap water.
well, just a sip, you know, for the experiment sake. And try a little bit of tap water, just to compare.
It'll be the first time in a long time.
Well, you think so, but you do.
It tastes
Tastes like chemically a little bit. Like some people refer it as a heavy taste. Now, I can get used to a lot of things. If I cross Gutless Bridge, you know how it stinks there?
Yeah.
People live there. They're like, oh, I don't smell. They get used to it. Like you go into the public bathroom first. It stinks. After a few minutes, it smells like roses. You get used to it. Now, what you felt there, it's mostly chlorine and disinfectants. Do you know what chlorine does? Why they add chlorine to the water?
To kill the bacteria.
Yeah, the key word is kill living organism and bacteria. Right. You and I are living organism, and even the cat. Do we have bacteria for digestion in our stomach?
Yes.
Do you think chlorine right now cares what you have inside?
No.
It's there to kill everything. This is the pool test. I'm just gonna grab the paper towel.
Okay.
This is the pool test. You know how if we swim in the swimming pool, we smell chlorine because it's an open surface, and the chlorine evaporates constantly. So they have to constantly add chlorine into the water. So if we go to Home Depot or Pool Supply, they sell a test kit for the pool. You see, it says to check how much chlorine in the pool.
Okay.
They say this is when you add chlorine. This is ideal. This is way too much. I'm putting 5 drops. This is what it says. Add 5 drops chlorine test solution, which will, if there is a chlorine, it will turn it yellow, and depending on the scale, that's how much chlorine you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, this is filtered water, and this is not filtered.
Okay.
The one that has chlorine, the water starts to react. The one that doesn't, nothing.
The
happens.
tap water is getting yellow.
Yeah, it's getting yellow. Yeah. I know you don't see this chlorine in here, right?
Which one is that?
This is also tap water.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Do me a favor, stick your fingers inside, like 3, 4 fingers all the way down, like, and hold it there. Just imagine you're doing manicure. Okay. The reason why I ask you to do this because if you go to DEP report, New York State require following statement: People who drank chlorinated drinking water for 20-30 years shows it's associated with increase of certain types of cancer, liver, kidney, nervous system, and ability to bear healthy offspring. Why do you think New York states that? Have you been drinking 20 years?
Yeah.
Will you be drinking for 20 years?
Yeah.
Hospitals not empty? Cemetery full of people?
Yep.
As long as they disclose it, you can't sue them in case in the future you get sick, because it's a disclosure.
Right.
Now, I don't know if you see the color-wise, like this is when you add, this is ideal, this is way too much. If I look, it says like somewhat ideal, right? Mm-hmm. The only problem is, this is the test for the pool.
Oh, this is ideal. That color
is ideal for the pool,
not for drinking.
Yeah. Well, okay. When is the last time you came up to the pool and start cooking? Right. Now, you buy organic food, vegetables. You say you don't drink tap water, but you do. Because what happens is every time when you take a shower, okay, your skin is the biggest organ that we have. Right. And every time when we take a shower, if the water is not filtered, I know you mentioned that you do have a filter, but a lot of people don't. This is Dr. Oz.
What people don't recognize, and this is perhaps the most important thing I'm going to say today, because a lot of you know there's a problem here. You don't recognize you've got a problem here, which is the water we bathe in and shower in. Now, tell moms right now, and I don't want to hedge on this, I don't think that you should be bathing your kids in the tub unless you know that water's clean. Because what ends up happening is the water's got chlorine in it, chloroform, other chemicals and byproducts get into the water. It's warm. That opens up the pores of the child. Child bathes in the water. All those chemicals get absorbed through the skin because the skin is very absorptive, and your child, therefore, is being contaminated.
Painkillers, blood thinners, and chemotherapy drugs are just some of the substances that are found in your drinking water. There's new information that some drugs are ending up in our water at levels never seen before. CBC's Kelly Crow has more on that.
There's something happening to the rainbow darter, a tiny fish that lives in the rivers of southern Ontario. If they're downstream from a sewage treatment plant, the male fish turn into females.
If you expose them to wastewater, they will feminize. They will have eggs in the testes.
What's causing the males to develop eggs? Human hormones, residue from prescription drugs that are flushed into the river. Using new highly sensitive equipment, scientists are finding an increasing variety of prescription drugs in the waterways. Painkillers, blood thinners, chemotherapy agents, hormones, antibiotics. If we swallow it, scientists can find it in the water.
Some of the drug comes in us and through us and out of us totally unchanged. So we actually have active drugs going into the waterway through our urine or feces.
Last month, a study of First Nations communities found levels of 3 prescription drugs in one southern Ontario river that were the highest in North America. And an unpublished Health Canada survey of tap water across the country found traces of prescription drugs in drinking water. Mark Servos is the lead author.
There are pharmaceuticals, as we expected, that are widely distributed in surface waters going into drinking water plants, and very low concentrations are detectable, but the concentrations are very, very low.
They're very low in concentrations. On the other hand, we have to be concerned because there's a mixture of these drugs that we're being exposed to in drinking water, and so that's some cause for concern.
So in other words, millions of people who take medicine, we pee it out. Right. Where does it go? We all live downstream from somebody. Nothing goes to space. If it's enough for male fish to turn females, who knows how it's affecting a child when they're developing hormones and so on.
This breaks way into a whole different discussion.
Yeah, well, do you know how many water supplies in the country filter out pharmaceutical out of sewage?
None.
0.
Yeah.
Nobody. So when I was growing up, the word allergy didn't exist. We didn't know what allergy was like. It wasn't. Now it's everywhere because there's chemicals here and here. We see pharmaceutical. 41 million Americans drinking water with their medicine inside, and over a long period of time, nobody knows how it's affected. You're drinking your water, and there's somebody else's medicine, and that filter in the shower filter doesn't remove it. The biggest problem, and this is the most important thing we're trying to educate people, they check each chemical individually. They don't tell us how they work all together. For example, I saw the liquor store on the corner right here. Mm-hmm. Okay, if I drink a sip of wine and the cop pulls me over, he can arrest me for a sip of wine, correct? What if I drink sip of wine, sip of vodka, sip of cognac, champagne, whiskey, Mama Juana, and all of it, whatever they have in the store? Will I be drunk?
Yeah.
Will I go to jail? But individually, it's okay. You understand?
See the point.
Together, nobody tells you how it's affected. And with age, only cognac and wine become better.
Grand Rapids' fight against tooth decay started in January 1945 when fluoride was added to the water supply. Other studies show the benefits of fluoridation will last throughout life.
Hey, my name is Brian, and I've been a water treatment operator for the past almost 30 years, since May of 1990. And you have to understand that in order to convert river water or lake water into potable drinking water, you have to use chemicals. You have to use dangerous chemicals. For example, polymer, while it's not that dangerous, does its job and is used up. What it does is it flocks positive and negative materials together and then goes into what we call a clarifier or a settling basin so that it can be clarified and then skimmed off with these weirs right here, which goes into the filtration system. So the idea of adding a polymer or a coagulant or something like alum is that you want to clarify the water before it goes to the filter so that you can have the cleanest water possible from that lake or river, and you won't tax your filters. Everything that goes through that filter is then cleaned with the carbon top, which is also called anthracite coal, or if you're pushing it through a membrane, like with a membrane filtration plant. Another dangerous chemical we use is chlorine. Now, a lot of people have a problem with chlorine, but if you didn't add chlorine to the water, then you wouldn't have the disinfectant properties. Without disinfection in the distribution system, in the water distribution system, you'd have things like Cryptosporidium or Giardia growing, and a whole lot of people would get sick and a whole lot of people would start dying. See, here's the thing about chlorine. Chlorine acts as a disinfectant to get rid of the bugs in the water. Like I said, Cryptosporidium, Giardia, and it's inserted into the water supply as a gas. It comes from the tanks as a liquid, goes through the tubes into the water as a gas, and it doesn't want to stay in the water. Even though it hangs around in the distribution system to continue its disinfection process, when you actually pour the water, the tap water, into, say an open container like a glass, if you sit it there long enough, the chlorine will evaporate, especially when you sit that water in the sun or you aerate it. The chlorine in the water wants to become a gas. It will go away. And you can also filter chlorine out, but that is not the case with fluoride.
Most of the many communities now fluoridating add sodium silica fluoride or sodium fluoride to their water. Another compound also used is hydrofluorosilicic acid. All three are effective and cheap.
There is no good reason to put hydrofluorosilicic acid into the water, especially water that people are going to drink. And I know all the arguments. I've heard the dentist say, well, if you put fluoride into the water, it's going to make children's teeth strong. It's going to make that enamel. It's going to bind to the enamel on their teeth, and it's going to make their bones strong and healthy. Let's just give them that, okay? Let's just say that's the case. And there are other way more effective methods and way less, actually not dangerous methods at all to doing that. The bottom line is sodium fluoride is a neurotoxin. It's an endocrine disruptor, and it's been proven to cause. Basically, you want to make people dumb and sick? Then subject them to involuntary mass medication by putting fluoride in their drinking water. On contact with fluoride, the tooth structure becomes fluorohydroxyapatite, but systemically, when it binds to the bones in our bodies or to the thyroid, it's never a good thing. It's a halogen on the periodic table of elements, and therefore it's toxic waste. See, what people don't understand is that tooth decay is caused by a bug called Streptococcus mutans, and you don't need fluoride in your body to combat that. As a matter of fact, fluoride can't combat that. And what's startling is that 75% of all water utilities fluoridate their water system. And you want to hear the ironic kicker? Kentucky is a state that mandates that fluoride be put in the water, and yet it's the state with the most amount of people with the least amount of teeth. So here's the deal. Involuntary mass medication is not the way to go. In fact, you could call it criminal, because what you're feeding the people, what you're making them drink involuntarily is toxic waste, literal poison in the water supply. Not to mention that study after study shows that fluoride calcifies the pineal gland. By the way, you want to know how the distribution guys detect a water leak as opposed to just rain runoff? How do you know it's the system water, and how do you know that water is coming out of that pipe? It's not by the presence of chlorine. Because remember what I said about chlorine? It wants to come out of the water. It wants to become a gas again. It wants to escape. So they can't determine a water break based on chlorine content. They have to determine it based on fluoride. Why? Because fluoride is an anion that stays in the water. So the danger of consuming that toxic waste is that it has a cumulative effect. So the bottom line is, I plead with all you system directors and superintendents and general managers of these water facilities out there, do your research about fluoride. Understand that it is indeed a toxic waste. There's no good reason to put that in the public's water supply. I also want to say to all you water treatment operators out there, you have a responsibility. Educate your own selves. Come to your own conclusion about what fluoride actually is. If indeed you are putting toxic waste in the water supply, you're literally poisoning yourself and your own families. The bottom line, guys, is sodium hydrofluorosilicic acid is industrial toxic waste, and we're putting it into the water supply. People drink it. You're actually involuntarily medicating people with poison. The sad fact is, it's easier to deceive people than to convince them that they've been deceived. And it's even easier to deceive them when they've been poisoned by fluoride. The purpose of this video is not to put any operator, any superintendent, or any general manager of any public utility, water treatment utility, on blast. It's simply to ask you to please do the research about fluoride and then come to your senses and stop putting a neurotoxin into people's water supply. Guys, if you got something out of this video, if you think this video can help anybody, please share it with everybody you know. This is literally life-saving information. I don't want people coming down with cancer. That's what's happening all across the country, and people are wondering, why is there so much childhood cancer? Why is there so much? It's because we're putting fluoride in the water. That's part of the reason. It's a huge part. When you ingest an anion that has a cumulative effect on your body and takes over your pineal gland and starts shutting down your thyroid, you have something very, very dangerous, very deadly. It's antithetical to humanity. It's involuntary mass medication on a poison scale. If you guys enjoy these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give them a thumbs up, and share them with everybody you know. I'll see you in the next heavily censored shadow ban video.
Fluoridation is endorsed by the American Dental Association, State and Territorial Dental Health Directors, American Association of Public Health Dentists, Public Health Service, Federal Security Agency, State and Territorial Health Officers, American Public Health Association, and the American Medical Association.